Is George Osborne guilty of a cheap political jibe in linking Mick Philpott's crime to the debate on welfare dependency?
Amongst other things, the Chancellor said, this is a question for government and society about the welfare state and the taxpayers who pay for it. Subsidising lifestyles like that, this debate needs to be held. Peter Hitchens?
Well, I think when you look at what the Chancellor said, it was quite mild. And I don't know whether it's cheap. I certainly think the government would be glad of any excuse to try and crank up support for its welfare reforms, which may be about to get it into a certain amount of political trouble. That's another issue. I think there is something troubling about the way in which, as a country, we have sought in the past 40 or 50 years to transform society, to change it completely in the most amazing revolutionary fashion, to enormously weaken marriage and the family, to pretty much get rid of the idea of the male breadwinner, to replace the breadwinner in many households with the state. And I would be surprised if this hadn't had a moral effect. But what seems to me to be most striking about Philpott is the way it demonstrates the appalling weakness of our criminal justice system. This is a man who actually stabbed somebody 27 times, ripped out the telephone wire to make sure no one could come and help her, and was as a result sent to prison, and not a particularly punitive prison, a prison in which he probably got along with the other inmates and didn't suffer much, for 3 years and 2 months. Not content with that, he then was found to have dragged his wife out of the house by the hair, having struck her, and was issued by our feeble police force with a caution. Soon after that, he attacked another driver on the road, punching him in the face, and was on bail for this offence when he committed the awful deeds for which he's now gone to prison. If only the criminal justice system had dealt with him firmly and severely at an early stage, none of what we now read about would ever have happened. But we all know, if we know anything about our society, that criminal justice system is made of cardboard. It's the real issue, and I'm surprised it isn't the one which has caught fire as a result of this case.
Let me go back on the...
What punishment should be handed out to the former bosses of HBOS?
Peter Hitchens.
Oh, I don't know. If they've broken the criminal law, then I suppose they can be punished. But I'm increasingly weary of this frenzy against bankers in a country which willingly accepted the enormous level of borrowing which has led us to the mess that we're in. Was it only the bankers lending the money who were responsible? It doesn't seem to me to be so. It was a compact between the bankers and the government and the people that we would all get heavily into debt. Now we pay the price. I think we should stop being so self-righteous about it, and especially stop chasing people around and taking away knighthoods and other things that were given to them in populist frenzies. It doesn't alter the fact that we are in a very, very deep mess because we chose to be in a mess, and we chose to break the rules which we had all been brought up to know, which is if you get into debt, you're in trouble. And that's what we did. We got into debt, we're in trouble. Stop blaming other people for it and start blaming yourselves.
Is North Korea a real threat to the UK, and would this justify Trident's replacement?
David Cameron, on the basis of what he saw as a threat of a nuclear missile attack from North Korea, concluded that it was important to replace Trident, like replacement of Trident. Peter Hitchens.
Well, in the Cold War, I thought that it was absolutely essential that we should retain a very powerful nuclear capacity because we were, in that case, under threat from a country called the Soviet Union, which has ceased to exist. I know it ceased to exist because I was there in Moscow when it collapsed. And I wouldn't say to Lord Heseltine I can guarantee anything about the future, but I can see absolutely no reason why we should ever be in a mutual assured destruction balance with Russia ever again, and I think it most unlikely. It seems to me also that what's been established very strongly in recent years, if you're interested in the real nature of power politics, is that there is a usable weapon available to great powers in Europe which might threaten us, and that is energy. One of the greatest threats to this country at the moment is the fact that its energy is coming increasingly from abroad, particularly the gas, which we're dependent upon because we've madly abandoned coal. And that means that a weapon is in the hands of the Russian government, for instance, which they can use and have used against Ukraine, against which we have no defence. We'd be much better off spending the money we propose to spend on a Trident replacement on building a whole chain of new nuclear power stations which would make us energy self-sufficient.
So would you surrender now the independent, so-called independent nuclear deterrent?
I would maintain a small nuclear deterrent, probably deliverable by aircraft or some other means. The whole Trident apparatus is designed to be defensible against a Soviet strike, which the Soviet Union no longer exists, which isn't coming. We obviously have a nuclear capacity which we shouldn't throw away. What we don't need is this vast, colossal thing which is designed for a war which in fact we won and which is over, and we don't need it anymore. And I just think it's time that we started to look at the real threats to our independence and integrity. And they are not nuclear weapons. They are fundamentally the energy shortage and the huge blackmailing power which the energy-owning countries increasingly have over us.
In the troubled spots of the world. The Trident is like a sort of, I don't want to use a phrase, but it's men showing off how manly they are. It is not a weapon which is relevant to the threats that we face in 2030.
Deanne, forgive me, but if my memory serves, you were against Britain's nuclear deterrent even when the Cold War was at its most serious.
If my memory serves me correctly, Lord Heseltine, militarism has always been your weakness. But even you have to accept that in 2013 we should not be spending.
Dan, it's no use asking another question to avoid answering the one I put to you.
I'm a politician, Lord Heseltine. What do
you were against the nuclear deterrent when the Russians was a real threat.
Were you not?
Were you not? Were you not against it then?
There is no.
Were you not against it?
Hang on.
It's interesting that he picks on Diane in this argument rather than on me, because he knows that I was in favour of it. Whereas Lord Heseltine has been in favour of the greatest threat to this country's independence, sovereignty and future in the
we're not going to go down Europe.
The European Union.
Peter,
much greater threat than
very, very important issue. Very important issue. Peter.
Socialist Worker Party.
I used to be a member of the International Socialists. You used to be a Conservative. I'm now a patriot, and you now support a body which seeks to subsume us into a multinational body.
I want to ask Lord Heseltine. I want to return, if you forgive me, to the question, and in the context.
Should hate crimes be renamed crimes of prejudice?
This has arisen presumably out of the Greater Manchester Police decision to treat those who are violently attacked, goths, punks, rockers, and so forth, because, in their words, the police words, their alternative subculture should not have to tolerate what they call hate crime. Peter Hitchens.
I'm completely baffled by this whole concept of hate crime. A crime is a crime. If someone attacks somebody, kills them, beats them up, then it's a crime. And that person should be arrested, prosecuted, tried, and punished for that crime. It doesn't matter who the victim of that crime is. We are all equal under the law. We all deserve its protection. This creation of special categories about which we should somehow or other be more concerned seems to me to be completely against the principles of English law and all our traditions, and perfectly unnecessary. And quite honestly, if our police and our prosecutors would actually take seriously most of the crimes which are committed, rather than ignoring them or pretending they don't exist, or spending their time fiddling the statistics to pretend they're going down when they're going up, we'd all be a lot better off. And look, I could demand a special form of hate crime against people with plummy voices. And what use would that be? Actually, if you use a plummy voice in certain public places, you can get into trouble quite quickly. I've tried it, and
you tried to put on a plummy voice?
Should there be a special hate crime for attacks on people with plummy voices? Of course not. Ludicrous. There should be a straightforward procedure. If you commit a crime, you should be punished for it, and we should leave it at that.